Instead of the warm, loving family atmosphere you'd expect, we're introduced to a household that feels more like a group of strangers accidentally living under the same roof. Welcome to the Suzuki family's apartment in Tokyo, a place where everyone shares an address, but almost nothing else. The story opens with Mitsu speaking to her elderly father, Sasaki, over the phone. Like many parents who live alone, he doesn't ask for expensive gifts or grand favors. He simply wishes his daughter and grandchildren would visit more often. To show his love, he has sent them a box filled with fresh fish and vegetables from his home. Sadly, that thoughtful gift receives the exact opposite reaction. When Mitsu asks her teenage daughter, Yui, to say hello to Grandpa, Yui doesn't even look interested. Instead of appreciating the conversation, she complains that the fish smells bad. It's a small moment, but it immediately tells us how disconnected this family has become. Things only get more awkward after the phone call. Mitsu bravely tries to clean and prepare the fish, but the smell completely overwhelms her. Her husband, Yoshiyuki, is no help at all. Rather than lending a hand, he practically runs away from the task. Since nobody wants to deal with it, the fish is shoved into the freezer where good intentions go to be forgotten. Then comes an unintentionally hilarious misunderstanding. The family spots what they think is a disgusting insect crawling across the vegetables. Everyone panics as if they've discovered some dangerous creature. But the audience quickly realizes the bug isn't a bug at all, it's actually one of Yui's fake eyelashes that somehow landed in the produce. It's a funny little scene that also shows how distracted everyone is. Meanwhile, Yoshiyuki has exactly one concern: when's dinner? He barely notices the chaos happening around him. Yui isn't paying attention either. Her entire world exists inside the screen of her smartphone, making everything else seem unimportant. As usual, Mitsu is left to handle everything herself. Before long, their son Kenji arrives home. Don't expect a cheerful greeting, though. Wearing headphones, he walks straight past his family without saying a single word. When his mother asks whether he'd like dinner, he silently holds up the fast food bag he already bought before disappearing into his room. It's becoming painfully obvious that this isn't really a family anymore. It's four people living separate lives under one roof. Behind their bedroom doors, both teenagers immediately disappear into their digital worlds. Screens have become their closest companions. Mitsu quietly worries about the growing phone bills and asks her husband to have a serious conversation with the children. Unfortunately, Yoshiyuki is just as absorbed, only his screen happens to be the television. The discussion never happens. The following morning, something unusual changes everything. Yoshiyuki wakes up late because his alarm never rings. At first, it seems like a broken clock. But when he looks closer, the hands are frozen at exactly 3 o'clock. Mitsu soon reveals the real problem: the entire neighborhood has lost electricity. Suddenly, modern life begins falling apart. Yui's biggest concern isn't the blackout itself. It's that her phone battery is nearly dead. Breakfast becomes another challenge. The rice cooker refuses to start. The electric stove is completely useless, and the family's comfortable routine instantly collapses. Luckily, Mitsu manages to light an old gas burner, proving she's the only person actually trying to solve problems. Even then, nobody has the patience to wait for food. Everyone rushes out the door hungry, only to discover that the elevator has also stopped working. With no other choice, every resident in the apartment building begins the long walk down countless flights of stairs, unaware that this inconvenience is only the beginning of a much larger disaster. What seemed like an annoying power outage is now revealing itself as something much bigger. The first clue is at the train station. Instead of the usual crowd squeezing onto packed trains, hundreds of confused commuters are stranded on the platforms. Electronic signs are completely blank. Station staff have no answers, and the only thing people hear is the same frustrating sentence: "We don't know when service will resume." For a city like Tokyo, where trains are the heartbeat of everyday life, that's almost unthinkable. With no other choice, Yoshiyuki begins the long walk to his office, probably realizing for the first time just how much he depends on technology for the simplest daily routine. Elsewhere, Kenji pedals toward college on his bicycle. At first, everything seems normal until his smartphone suddenly dies. The battery drains so fast that it's almost as if the phone has simply given up. That tiny moment feels surprisingly unsettling. Without a phone, he's no longer connected to friends, maps, music, or the internet. Modern life starts feeling strangely silent. As the city slowly grinds to a halt, another disturbing pattern appears. Cars sit motionless in the middle of roads like giant metal decorations, and Gains refuse to start, no matter how many times drivers turn the keys. Ironically, the only vehicles still moving are bicycles, making the streets look as if they've jumped back several decades. One frustrated taxi driver even pours water into the engine, hoping for a miracle. Unsurprisingly, the car remains as lifeless as before. Desperation is beginning to replace logic. Back at the apartment complex, Mitsu chats with her neighbors, hoping someone has figured out what's happening. Unfortunately, everyone is just as confused. Since nobody has electricity, the neighborhood women decide to buy candles before the stores run out. Mitsu eagerly joins them, then suddenly remembers she left her wallet upstairs. It's a small inconvenience, but in a day filled with problems, even simple mistakes feel much bigger than they normally would. Meanwhile, Yoshiyuki finally reaches his office building, only to discover another obstacle. Nobody can get inside. The entrance doors rely on electronic locks, and without power, hundreds of employees are literally locked out of work. After waiting long enough, a couple of determined workers decide there's only one solution: smash the glass. Sometimes the old-fashioned method works best. Once inside, the struggle isn't over. Elevators are dead, forcing everyone to climb endless flights of stairs. And after all that effort, they discover something almost comical. There isn't actually any work they can do. No lights, no computers, no network. An office full of employees has become nothing more than a room full of bored people. Across town, Yui's school is facing the exact same chaos. Students continue arriving late because public transportation has collapsed. And for the first time in years, almost nobody is staring at a smartphone. Not because they suddenly became social, but because every battery is dying. Even several teachers fail to show up, leaving the school scrambling to improvise. With normal lessons impossible, many students are simply sent to study hall, where confusion spreads faster than any official explanation. Kenji's college isn't doing any better. Classes are disrupted, schedules fall apart, and nobody seems to know whether this blackout will end in a few hours or continue much longer. Then the story shifts to a grocery store, where another side of human nature begins to emerge. The shelves containing ready-made meals have already been picked clean. Panic buying has started almost instantly. Customers grab candles, bottled water, batteries, and anything else that might help them survive a prolonged outage. People aren't shopping anymore. They're preparing for the unknown. Watching everyone else panic, Mitsu does exactly what most ordinary people would do. She starts filling her own basket too. Fear can be surprisingly contagious. Just when shoppers think things can't get any worse, the employees make an important announcement. Electronic payment systems are down. No credit cards. Cash only. Within seconds, customers abandon their carts and rush toward the nearest ATMs, believing cash will solve everything. But reality delivers yet another unpleasant surprise. The ATMs are completely dead. For the first time, many people realize that the problem isn't limited to their homes or neighborhoods. Whatever has happened, it's affecting the entire system. As the hours drag on, it becomes painfully obvious that this isn't just a temporary inconvenience. The office has transformed into a place where hundreds of employees are doing absolutely nothing. With no computers, no internet, and no electricity, everyone simply waits, hoping someone, somewhere will fix the problem. Eventually, the boss gives up and sends everyone home early. Normally, that would sound like great news. Today, it feels more like surrender. After walking across half the city once already, Yoshiyuki refuses to torture his legs again. His solution seems simple: buy a bicycle. Unfortunately, so did everyone else. The bicycle shops look as if they're hosting a survival sale. Prices have skyrocketed overnight because desperate people are willing to pay almost anything. It's a perfect reminder of how quickly basic necessities become luxury items during a crisis. Yoshiyuki grumbles, hands over far more money than the bike is worth, and rides home anyway. Sometimes you don't buy what you want, you buy what's left. Back at the apartment building, another reality of the blackout becomes impossible to ignore. An elderly woman is sitting halfway up the staircase, completely exhausted. Without elevators, every trip home has become a mountain climb, and while younger residents complain about the inconvenience, older people are fighting a much harder battle just to reach their own front door. That quiet moment says more than any news report could. As night falls, the Suzuki family gathers around a table illuminated by nothing but candlelight. The atmosphere almost looks peaceful, until you remember they're eating this way because they have no alternative. Trying to convince himself that life can continue as normal, Yoshiyuki stubbornly works with pen and paper, as if determination alone can replace modern technology. The family's daily routine becomes a series of strange survival tricks. The toilet won't flush unless someone carries water from the bathtub and pours it in manually. The kitchen tap has gone dry, leaving dirty dishes piled higher after every meal. Even the simplest household chores suddenly require planning, effort, and patience. It's amazing how many things we never appreciate until they're gone. Yui, already bored out of her mind without her phone, tries reading a magazine beside a candle. She leans in a little too close, and suddenly smells something burning. It's her own hair. Thankfully, it's only a small accident. But it's another reminder that even ordinary activities become surprisingly dangerous when modern conveniences disappear. Meanwhile, the endless boredom finally pushes both teenagers out of their bedrooms. For the first time in what feels like forever, nobody is hiding behind a screen. Seeing this rare opportunity, Mitsu suggests the family step onto the balcony together. And then the film gives us one of its most beautiful contrasts. With the city's millions of lights completely extinguished, the night sky reveals something most urban residents have almost forgotten exists. Thousands of stars stretch across the darkness. Ironically, only after humanity loses its own lights can it finally see the universe shining above. 2 more days pass, still no electricity. Hope is slowly giving way to routine. Mitsu now washes clothes entirely by hand, using precious water stored in the bathtub. It's exhausting work, but there are no machines left to do it for her. At school, Yui finds only a handful of students wandering the nearly empty campus. There isn't much point staying, so she simply turns around and heads home. Across town, Yoshiyuki receives another crushing update. The company is officially shutting down until electricity returns. Nobody knows whether that means tomorrow or next month. As he watches his boss pack up and leave for the mountains with his family, the message becomes painfully clear. Some people aren't waiting for help anymore. They're trying to outrun the disaster. Just as Yoshiyuki prepares to leave, he catches someone attempting to steal his bicycle. Considering bicycles have suddenly become more valuable than some electronics, perhaps that isn't surprising. One angry shout is enough to send the thief running before the situation gets worse. Elsewhere, Kenji pedals into the neighboring town, hoping things might be different there. Instead, he finds exactly the same darkness. No electricity. No answers. No escape. He has another reason for making the trip, though. He's hoping to see the girl he secretly likes. When she finally appears, confidence completely abandons him. Rather than speaking to her, he hides like a frightened child behind whatever cover he can find. In his panic, he knocks over his bicycle, injuring his foot. By the time he recovers, it's already too late. He silently watches as the girl leaves town with her family, disappearing down the road without ever knowing he was there. It's a surprisingly heartbreaking moment. Sometimes the opportunities we lose have nothing to do with disasters, they disappear because fear speaks louder than courage. Meanwhile, Mitsu joins dozens of anxious neighbors waiting outside the local water treatment plant. Hours pass under the sun, as everyone clings to the hope of filling a few bottles. Finally, the workers deliver devastating news. The treatment plant has stopped operating. Without electricity, the pumps cannot bring water through the purification system. Technically, groundwater still exists beneath their feet, but untreated water can carry dangerous bacteria and diseases. The employees refuse to distribute unsafe water, knowing that solving one crisis could easily create another. Their explanation is reasonable. The crowd doesn't care. Exhausted, thirsty, and frightened, people begin shouting in frustration. As supplies disappear and uncertainty grows, the blackout is no longer just shutting down machines. It's beginning to test human patience, trust, and the thin line between order and chaos. A full week has passed since the lights went out. By now, the blackout isn't just an inconvenience anymore. It's quietly dismantling the entire system people once trusted. Yoshiyuki heads to the bank, hoping to withdraw enough cash for his family before things get even worse. Inside, the employees look just as exhausted as the customers. They explain that ATMs are completely dead, debit cards are nothing more than useless pieces of plastic, and electronic banking has practically vanished overnight. The only way to get money now is the old-fashioned way. Bring your identification. Bring your bank passbook. Wait in line. And even then, the bank limits everyone to a modest withdrawal so cash doesn't disappear in a single day. The announcement barely finishes before panic takes over. The orderly line instantly transforms into a human stampede. People shove strangers, squeeze through tiny gaps, and race toward the counters, as though money itself is about to become extinct. It's fascinating and a little frightening how quickly good manners disappear when fear enters the room. Caught in the chaos, Yoshiyuki drops all of his paperwork. As he kneels to collect it, people continue pushing past without even noticing him. By the time he manages to escape the crowd, blood is dripping from his nose. The blackout hasn't created monsters. It's simply exposing how desperate ordinary people can become. 7 days after the disaster began, Tokyo feels almost unrecognizable. Supermarket shelves have been stripped bare. Schools have shut their doors. Families who traveled to neighboring towns searching for food or electricity returned with nothing except disappointment. Wherever people go, the same darkness follows them. Every hour, more residents abandon the city altogether, convinced that survival lies somewhere beyond the endless concrete. Back at the apartment building, the neighbors gather for yet another meeting. Everyone talks. Nobody has any real answers. Eventually, Yoshiyuki and Mitsu remember an elderly woman who hasn't been seen for several days. Concern replaces curiosity. They knock. No answer. When they finally learn the truth, it's heartbreaking. The old woman passed away alone, and her relatives have come to collect her body. The scene is quiet. There are no dramatic speeches, just the painful realization that disasters don't only destroy buildings, they quietly claim the most vulnerable people first. That moment becomes the final push. Yoshiyuki and Mitsu decide they can no longer wait for Tokyo to recover. It's time to leave. That evening they tell the children they're heading to Mitsu's father's village. Naturally, Yui complains immediately. To her, a tiny countryside village sounds unbearably boring compared to city life. Mitsu smiles sadly and reminds her that she used to love playing on the village beach when she was little. Yui can't remember any of it. Sometimes childhood memories disappear, long before we realize how valuable they are. As everyone packs their belongings, Kenji quietly throws away the photograph of the girl he secretly admired. Without saying a word, he's accepting something many people experience during disasters. Sometimes life moves forward before you're emotionally ready to let go. Before leaving, the family empties every drawer, jacket pocket, and piggy bank in the apartment, gathering every last bit of cash they own. Then, Mitsu surprises everyone. For years, she'd secretly been saving emergency money. Back when everything was normal, it probably seemed unnecessary. Now, it might save their lives. On their way downstairs, they hear the lonely barking of a dog left behind by its owners. Everyone pauses for a brief moment, then continues walking. It's a heartbreaking reminder that in desperate times, people are often forced to leave behind things they truly care about. The children ride their own bicycles, while Mitsu shares one with Yoshiyuki. Together, they begin their journey through a city that's slowly emptying itself. Every road is filled with people carrying backpacks, dragging suitcases, pushing bicycles, and searching for hope somewhere else. Along the way, opportunists have set up makeshift stalls selling food and drinking water. The prices are outrageous. Yoshiyuki refuses to pay. Unfortunately, every kilometer they travel teaches the same lesson. Things don't get cheaper, they get worse. Eventually, they reach a small shop where Mitsu does something nobody else has managed all week. She negotiates. Instead of arguing or panicking, she calmly speaks with the owner until both sides agree on a fair deal. It's proof that kindness and patience still have value even during a crisis. The family finally enjoys a proper meal and takes a well-earned break. Nearby, the siblings notice a fisherman effortlessly pulling one fish after another from the river. Ironically, despite food becoming increasingly scarce, they can only think about how disgusting fresh fish looks. It's funny how our tastes don't always change as quickly as our circumstances. Soon, another unpleasant reality arrives. The public restrooms have become almost unusable. Without running water, toilets haven't been flushed for days, and the smell alone is enough to drive people away. Embarrassed, but with no alternatives, the family heads behind nearby bushes instead. Modern civilization is disappearing one convenience at a time. Eventually, they arrive at the airport, hoping for faster transportation. Instead, they find thousands of equally desperate people crowded outside. No planes are taking off. No flights are boarding. The airport has become nothing more than another dead building. Police officers struggle to hold back the frustrated crowd. Some people eventually give up and leave. Others explode with anger and begin attacking the officers. Fear has started turning into violence. As night falls, the family checks into the nearest motel. Like almost everything else, the room costs far more than it should. At this point, arguing feels pointless. They simply need somewhere safe to sleep. The following morning brings another difficult announcement. Yoshiyuki reveals they'll have to complete the journey by bicycle. Yui reacts exactly as expected. She complains some more, and then somehow finds new things to complain about. Even during the collapse of society, teenagers remain wonderfully consistent. Meanwhile, Kenji and Yui sneak into a library, hoping to find a roadmap. Unfortunately, almost every useful map has already been taken. The only one left is a colorful children's version that looks more suitable for a school project than a survival journey. Still, it's better than nothing. After estimating the distance, Kenji reaches a sobering conclusion. At their current pace, reaching the village could take nearly an entire month. The destination suddenly feels much farther away than anyone imagined. While the children study their cartoon map, Yoshiyuki and Mitsu search for another bicycle. They find one outside a rice shop, but money has already lost much of its power. The owner doesn't want cash. She wants useful supplies. Food has become currency. Water has become currency. Survival itself has become currency. After some careful bargaining, the couple manages to trade several bottles of alcohol for both a bicycle and a valuable bag of rice. In a world where banks barely function, bartering is making a comeback. Finally, the family leaves once again. Closed roads force them into constant detours, and before long they realize their children's map is almost useless. With few options remaining, they steer toward the expressway. The toll booths stand abandoned. Nobody is collecting fees anymore. As they ride onto the highway, an unforgettable sight stretches across the horizon. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people are moving in the same direction. Families, cyclists, pedestrians, everyone is fleeing the city together. For the first time, it becomes painfully clear. Tokyo isn't waiting for the blackout to end anymore. Tokyo is evacuating. Days into the journey, exhaustion becomes their constant companion. Every mile feels longer than the last, and even finding a place to rest has become another daily challenge. When the family reaches a large shopping mall, it almost feels like civilization has returned. For a brief moment anyway. The automatic doors are lifeless, every entrance is locked tight. And the once busy shopping center has become nothing more than a giant concrete shelter. With nowhere else to go, they spread their blankets outside and prepare to spend another freezing night under the open sky. Not long after, a desperate couple approaches them with a simple question. Do you have any water? Just a week ago, sharing a bottle wouldn't have required a second thought. Now it's practically asking someone to give away tomorrow's survival. Mitsu instinctively hides their remaining bottles, while Yoshiyuki quietly lies, insisting they don't have any left. It's uncomfortable to watch, because it's exactly the kind of choice ordinary people hope they'll never have to make. That night, sleep refuses to come easily. The cold cuts through every layer of clothing, and every strange sound feels like another possible threat. Then, suddenly, Kenji notices a shadow slipping away with their precious water. Without thinking twice, he jumps up and chases the thief into a pitch-black tunnel. Fueled by anger, he's ready to tackle the man, until he finally catches up. The thief isn't a violent criminal. He's a desperate father carrying a tiny baby in his arms. In that instant, everything changes. Kenji silently steps back and allows the man to keep the water. Sometimes compassion costs more than revenge. The following morning, the family reaches the same tunnel. Waiting outside are several blind women offering an unusual service. For a price, they'll guide travelers safely through the darkness. At first, it sounds almost ridiculous. It's just one straight tunnel, the family thinks. Why would anyone pay for that? So they confidently walk inside on their own. A few minutes later, they realize exactly why. Without light, every abandoned vehicle becomes an obstacle. Every strange object underfoot feels terrifying. At one point, they accidentally step on the decaying body of a dead raccoon, instantly regretting every life decision that brought them there. Pride finally gives way to common sense. They turn around, hire one of the blind guides, and watch in amazement as she effortlessly leads them through the darkness. Sometimes experience is worth far more than eyesight. By the 16th day, survival has become routine. The family stops beside a river to wash their filthy clothes. Their supply of matches has almost disappeared. Their drinking water is gone. And hunger is no longer the biggest problem. Thirst is. Ignoring everyone's warnings, Yoshiyuki scoops water directly from the river and drinks it. His family watches with obvious concern. Nature may look clean. That doesn't mean it is. A few hours later, dark clouds gather overhead. Without warning, a violent storm crashes down upon them. Rain pours relentlessly while powerful winds scatter their belongings across the landscape. The family huddles beneath a bridge, helplessly watching their bicycles, supplies, and hard-earned possessions disappear in every direction. Then, in the middle of all this chaos, Yoshiyuki suddenly sprints into an open field. Not to rescue supplies, not to save anyone. His stomach has officially declared war. The untreated river water has caught up with him, and the timing couldn't possibly be worse. It's one of those moments that's both miserable and strangely funny. Mother Nature has a brutal sense of humor. When the storm finally passes, the damage becomes painfully clear. Mitsu's glasses are cracked. Their precious bag of rice is scattered across muddy ground. One bicycle tire is completely ruined. And Yoshiyuki still looks like he'd rather negotiate with the storm than his own digestive system. Realizing he needs proper rest, the family heads toward the nearest town. While their exhausted parents recover, Kenji and Yui quietly sneak into an abandoned supermarket. Their hopes disappear almost immediately. Every useful shelf has already been emptied. No canned food, no tires, no matches. Nothing. Well, almost nothing. After searching every corner, they manage to collect 3 unlikely treasures: a road flare, several cans of cat food, and bottles of battery water, which, despite sounding terrifying, is purified water suitable for drinking. Desperate times create very unusual shopping lists. Back at camp, curiosity gets the better of Yui. She opens a can of cat food, takes one brave bite, and instantly spits it back out with complete regret. Apparently, cats have very different culinary standards than humans. Unfortunately, hunger doesn't leave many alternatives. Meanwhile, Kenji faces another problem. His damaged bicycle tire is useless. With no repair kits available anywhere, he improvises by cutting apart his silicone phone case and turning it into a makeshift patch. It's not pretty, but survival rarely is. As the days pass, things that once seemed impossible slowly become normal. Rain-soaked clothes, cold nights, improvised repairs. Even eating cat food eventually stops feeling shocking. Human beings are remarkably adaptable, sometimes more than we'd like to admit. One evening, the family encounters another group of travelers, the Saito family. Unlike most refugees they've met, these people appear surprisingly calm. Instead of panicking, they seem completely at home outdoors. The reason soon becomes obvious. Long before the blackout, they regularly camped in the mountains and spent weekends living off the land. The survival skills that once looked like harmless hobbies have suddenly become priceless knowledge. They show the Suzukis how clean drinking water slowly seeps from moss-covered rocks. They explain how hanging food in open air helps preserve it longer. They identify edible weeds growing unnoticed beside the road. They even recommend unusual foods that most city residents would never dream of eating. In a world where supermarkets no longer function, nature quietly becomes the biggest grocery store. One of the Saito boys carries something almost forgotten in the modern world. An old mechanical camera. No batteries, no charging cable. Just gears, film, and craftsmanship. While smartphones have become useless bricks, this decades-old camera still captures memories perfectly. He snaps a group photograph, and Yui happily writes down an address so he can mail her a copy someday. It's a surprisingly hopeful moment. A reminder that people are still planning for a future. The two families continue traveling together for a while, sharing knowledge, food, and encouragement. Mitsu and the children quickly grow fond of the Saitos. Yoshiyuki, not so much. Instead of appreciating their experience, his pride quietly turns into jealousy. He begins pedaling faster and faster, almost as if winning an imaginary race will somehow prove he's just as capable. Disasters don't erase human ego. Sometimes they expose it even more clearly. Later, while resting near a bridge, everyone notices a column of soldiers marching along the road. The sight immediately raises new questions. One local man explains that they're coming from a nuclear power plant, which also shut down during the nationwide blackout. Now they're heading toward another prefecture to inspect a different facility. The information hangs heavily in the air. Until now, the crisis seemed limited to electricity and supplies. But if critical infrastructure like nuclear plants is also failing, the situation may be far more dangerous than anyone realizes. Not long afterward, the two families say their goodbyes. The Saitos choose one direction. The Suzukis choose another. Rumors have begun spreading that Osaka may still have electricity. Whether those rumors are true, or simply another desperate hope, is something the Suzuki family is about to discover. By the 43rd day, the Suzuki family finally reaches Osaka. For weeks, they've been clinging to a single rumor. Maybe Osaka still has electricity. It's the kind of hope that keeps exhausted people putting one foot in front of the other. Unfortunately, the rumor dies the moment they arrive. Osaka is just as dark, just as silent, just as broken. The disappointment hits harder than hunger. After spending more than a month on the road, they haven't escaped the disaster at all. They've only changed the scenery. Yui finally reaches her breaking point. She's hungry. She's thirsty. She's exhausted. And like many teenagers, she doesn't hide her emotions very well. Her frustration explodes into a loud argument that everyone has been trying to avoid. The family's anger, fear, and disappointment spill out all at once. In the middle of the shouting, one uncomfortable truth emerges. Everyone quietly realizes that Yoshiyuki, the man who was supposed to lead and protect them, has spent most of this journey reacting to problems instead of preparing for them. It's a painful realization. Leadership isn't about acting confident. It's about making good decisions when nobody else can. Still searching for food, the family wanders through the city until they stumble upon one of the strangest sights imaginable. Outside a public aquarium, hundreds of hungry people have gathered. The workers have accepted a heartbreaking reality. Without electricity, the tanks can no longer support the sea creatures living inside them. Rather than letting the animals die for nothing, they're distributing them as food. Fish, crabs, whatever can still feed someone. It's a heartbreaking scene because the aquarium, once a place where people admired marine life, has suddenly become an emergency grocery store. The Suzukis immediately rush to join the line. For a brief moment, hope returns. Then, just as they reach the front, the last fish is handed to someone else. They're too late. Again, sometimes survival isn't about effort. Sometimes, luck decides everything. Days blur into weeks. The calendar reaches day 67. By now, every step feels heavier than the last. The family barely has enough strength to stand, let alone continue walking. Eventually, they collapse in the countryside, defeated by hunger. Desperation begins changing people. Yoshiyuki suddenly spots a large insect crawling nearby. Without even thinking, he grabs it. The fact that he's genuinely considering eating a bug says everything about how close they are to starvation. Then fate offers another option. A wild pig appears in the distance. Everyone instantly forgets about the insect. The exhausted family somehow gathers enough energy for one final chase. They surround the animal from every direction, stumbling, slipping, and shouting as the pig desperately tries to escape. It's messy, it's chaotic, and honestly, it's almost impossible to believe this ordinary city family is suddenly hunting wild livestock. Against all odds, Yoshiyuki finally manages to bring the pig down. Victory lasts only a few seconds. Now comes the difficult part. Nobody wants to cut it open. Catching dinner is one thing. Preparing it is another story entirely. Kenji reluctantly picks up the knife, only for a farmer named Tanaka to calmly step forward. With the confidence of someone who's done this countless times, he finishes the job in seconds. The contrast couldn't be clearer. For the Suzukis, this is horrifying. For Tanaka, it's simply another day's work. The family follows him back to his farmhouse, where something almost magical awaits them. A real well, fresh water. Not bottled, not rationed, just clean water drawn straight from the ground. After months of treating every sip like treasure, it feels almost unbelievable. Tanaka explains why he helped them. When the nationwide blackout disabled his electric fences, every one of his pigs escaped. If the Suzukis help round them up, he'll gladly share his food. For once, survival isn't about charity, it's about teamwork. The family eagerly accepts. The next morning, Tanaka serves them a breakfast they've probably been dreaming about for weeks. Fresh food, hot food, real food. Among the dishes is smoked pork prepared on the farm. The first bite overwhelms Yui. Not because it's spicy, not because it's fancy, because she'd almost forgotten what a satisfying meal tastes like. She quietly begins to cry. Hunger has a way of making even the simplest meal feel unforgettable. Soon, one of Tanaka's neighbors arrives, carrying fresh vegetables. Unlike the panic and selfishness seen in the cities, the countryside still holds on to something precious. Community. People help each other because tomorrow they might need the same kindness returned. Of course, breakfast isn't free. Tanaka immediately puts the family to work. It's time to butcher the pig properly. Needless to say, nobody volunteers. The Suzukis look horrified. City life never prepared them for anything like this. But survival doesn't ask whether you're comfortable. It asks whether you're willing. With plenty of hesitation and more than a few disgusted expressions, they push through the task together. Surprisingly, Tanaka notices something interesting. A job that normally takes him hours finishes much faster with 4 extra pairs of hands. The meat is carefully separated, salted, and preserved so none of it goes to waste. Nothing is wasted anymore. Not food, not water, not effort. Even bathing requires hard work. Buckets of water must be hauled from the well by hand. Firewood has to be chopped. A fire must be built beneath the bath, just to heat enough water for everyone. Simple comforts suddenly reveal the amount of labor they once required. That evening, Tanaka lends the family clean pajamas. He quietly explains they were originally bought for his son's family. They live in the United States now. Since the blackout, he hasn't had any way to contact them. He has no idea whether they're safe. Or even alive. For the first time in a long while, Yoshiyuki and Mitsu stop worrying about tomorrow. Instead, they look at their children sleeping nearby. Compared to Tanaka, they're incredibly fortunate. Whatever hardships they've faced, they're still together. That night, the couple falls asleep, holding each other's hands, a simple gesture that says more than words ever could. The following days settle into a peaceful rhythm. Instead of running from disaster, the family begins learning how to live without modern conveniences. They spend mornings chasing runaway pigs across the fields. What would have seemed like exhausting work before somehow turns into laughter and friendly competition. Who would have guessed pig herding could become family entertainment? Mitsu teaches Yui how to sew and repair clothing by hand. Skills that once felt old-fashioned suddenly become incredibly valuable. Yoshiyuki spends hours chopping firewood, slowly discovering that muscles can sometimes replace machines. Kenji finally repairs his battered bicycle using proper tools instead of improvised fixes. Little by little, they're no longer just surviving, they're adapting. Watching their transformation, Tanaka makes an unexpected offer. He asks them to stay. The farmhouse has room, the work is easier with extra hands. And after living alone for so long, he simply doesn't want the silence to return. It's a generous invitation, but the Suzukis have one destination left. Mitsu's father is still waiting for them. Home isn't always the safest place. Sometimes it's simply where the people you love are. Understanding their decision, Tanaka smiles and sends them off with one final gift. Enough smoked pork to carry them through the next stage of their journey. It's more than food. It's proof that even in a world falling apart, kindness is still one resource that hasn't run out. Just when it seems the Suzuki family has learned how to survive anything, nature throws one final obstacle in their path. A wide river stretches across the landscape. The map says there should be a bridge. Reality disagrees. The bridge is gone. For a few silent seconds, nobody says a word. After months of walking, climbing, starving, and sleeping outdoors, the idea of turning back isn't even worth considering. So, Yoshiyuki does something he probably never imagined he'd do before the blackout. He starts building a raft, using abandoned rope, pieces of wood, and an old oar lying near the riverbank. The family works together like an experienced construction crew. Ironically, the people who once struggled to cook a fish have now become surprisingly resourceful. Their homemade raft isn't beautiful, it isn't safe, but it's all they've got. The first crossing goes well. Yoshiyuki and Kenji carefully ferry Mitsu, Yui, and all of their precious supplies across the river. One successful trip. One problem solved. Or so they think. Now only the bicycles remain. As the two men paddle back, dark clouds suddenly gather overhead. Rain begins falling. The peaceful river transforms into a rushing current almost overnight. Knowing they don't have much time, Yoshiyuki insists on loading every bicycle onto the raft. Kenji isn't convinced. Unfortunately, he's right. The extra weight is too much. The makeshift raft snaps apart with a loud crack. Wood scatters across the river as the current immediately takes control. Kenji doesn't hesitate. He abandons the bicycles and swims towards safety. His father, however, refuses to let go. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's stubbornness. Or maybe after losing so much already, he simply can't bear the thought of losing one more thing. He clings desperately to the floating wood. Then the bicycles shift beneath the water. Their weight drags him under. Move! His family can only scream helplessly from the opposite shore as the river carries him away. Within seconds, he's gone. When the rain finally stops, Kenji searches desperately along the riverbank. Every fallen branch gives him hope. Every shadow makes him look twice. Then he finds something floating quietly in the water. His father's toupee. That's all. The family breaks down. It's such an oddly ordinary object. Yet it becomes heartbreaking proof that they believe Yoshiyuki is gone. Sometimes grief arrives through the smallest things. By the 94th day, the remaining three continue walking alone. The atmosphere has completely changed. Nobody talks much anymore. Mitsu can barely force herself to keep moving. Her body is exhausted. Her heart even more so. Eventually, Kenji gently takes hold of her arm and practically pulls her forward. Sometimes surviving means carrying people emotionally, not just physically. During a short break, they finally decide to eat some of the smoked pork Tanaka gave them. Just as they unwrap it, a skinny stray dog appears nearby. It doesn't bark. It simply stares at them with hungry eyes. Yui's heart immediately melts. She wants to share. Kenji quickly stops her. Food isn't something they can replace anymore. Before either of them can react, the clever dog snatches the meat straight from Yui's hand and disappears like a furry little thief. You almost have to admire the confidence. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end of it. Soon more dogs emerge from the surrounding fields. One large Doberman lunges toward Mitsu, grabbing her backpack with its teeth. She desperately pulls back. The struggle lasts only a moment. Before she loses her footing, she tumbles down the hillside, disappearing into the grass. The children race after her in panic. Thankfully, she's alive. But her ankle clearly isn't. Every step becomes agonizing. Moving was already difficult. Now it becomes painfully slow. Meanwhile, the hungry dogs finish tearing through the spilled supplies. With almost nothing left to steal, they begin circling the family instead. The three of them instinctively huddle together. No weapons, no strength, no escape. For a terrifying moment, it feels as though this might actually be the end. Then, a loud whistle echoes across the countryside. The ground begins to shake. A cloud of steam rises above the tracks. An old steam locomotive bursts into view like something from another century. The startled dogs scatter immediately. The train slows, then stops directly beside the family. The passengers quickly pull them aboard. For the first time in months, someone helps them instead of competing with them. Inside the train, bottles of clean water are passed around freely. The carriages are filled with other former Tokyo residents, all searching for a new beginning in the countryside. A doctor carefully examines Mitsu's injured ankle and wraps it with fresh bandages. Then he casually asks about their father. The question opens a wound no bandage can fix. Both children quietly begin crying. Elsewhere, Far downstream, another story is unfolding. Yoshiyuki opens his eyes. He's alive. Barely, weak, soaked, and completely alone. He somehow staggers to his feet. Each step feels impossible. Eventually, he collapses beside an abandoned tractor, unable to continue. Then fate gives him one last opportunity. In the distance, he hears a train. Looking up, he sees it rolling across the landscape. He wants to shout. His body won't cooperate. His voice is too weak. Then he remembers something tucked inside his pocket, the emergency flare. With trembling hands, he manages to ignite it. A brilliant red light streaks into the sky. Back aboard the train, Mitsu notices the flare immediately. Her heart tells her something her mind barely dares believe. She urgently asks the engineer to stop. The train screeches to a halt. The children leap off before it has fully stopped moving. Moments later, they're embracing the father they thought they'd already buried. It's one of those reunions that needs no dramatic speech. Sometimes tears say everything. Later, while everyone settles back onto the train, Mitsu quietly hands Yoshiyuki the toupee they believed was all that remained of him. He smiles, looks at it one last time, and tosses it away. After everything he's survived, worrying about fake hair suddenly feels wonderfully unimportant. As the train enters a long tunnel, thick black smoke pours through the open windows, filling every carriage. Passengers cough uncontrollably. When the smoke finally clears, everyone notices something hilarious. Every face is completely covered in soot. For the first time in a very long while, the entire train bursts into laughter. After months filled with fear, hunger, and uncertainty, even a smoke-covered face feels like a gift. On the 108th day, the Suzuki family finally reaches Mitsu's father's village. Standing outside his home, Sasaki can hardly believe his eyes. For so long, he'd wished his family would come visit. He just never imagined it would happen under circumstances like these. The reunion is quiet, warm, and deeply emotional. Time moves forward. 2 years and 126 days later, life looks completely different. The Suzukis no longer depend on supermarkets. They grow vegetables with their own hands. They catch fish from nearby rivers. They repair clothes instead of replacing them. The people who once struggled to survive without electricity have learned something far more valuable: how to live without taking everyday comforts for granted. Then, one peaceful morning, an unexpected sound echoes through the village. An alarm clock. Yoshiyuki follows the ringing to an old storage shed. Seconds later, music begins playing through the village loudspeakers. Neighbors slowly step outside. Then something almost everyone had stopped expecting finally happens. The streetlights turn on. Electricity has returned. Within days, former Tokyo residents begin moving back to the city. TV experts offer endless explanations. Maybe it was an enormous solar flare. Maybe a passing comet disrupted Earth's magnetic field. Maybe a massive cyber attack. Everyone has a theory. Nobody has a definite answer. But by now, the exact cause doesn't matter nearly as much as what the Suzuki family learned because of it. Back home, they continue living differently. They spend real time together instead of disappearing behind separate screens. They install an old-fashioned landline instead of depending entirely on mobile phones. Even after modern life returns, Yoshiyuki still rides his bicycle to work, a quiet reminder that convenience should never replace resilience. One afternoon, the mailman delivers an ordinary envelope. Inside is the photograph taken months earlier by the Saito family's son. A single picture, covered with smiles, captured during the hardest journey of their lives. It's more than a photograph. It's proof that even in the middle of darkness, people can still find reasons to hope, to laugh, and to become a better version of themselves. If you enjoyed this movie recap, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you love movie recaps like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next recap.